The owner of this car came in saying it had started to feel like it was floating over every bump, and when the mechanic had a look, the upper strut mount was just not feeling very well. This vehicle rolled in because it had stopped moving after the customer had tried to shift into 4th gear on the highway but accidentally forced it into reverse, which resulted in this mess. And this plow truck had some wiring work done at some point. The kind of work that makes you wonder how it's still starting every morning. This customer came in with their truck like this after their stepbrother had done some welding on the subframe for them for free. I can see why it was for free. The owner of this car had been hearing a pretty weird sound for a couple of weeks and finally came in to have it checked out. Turns out, whoever had done the oil change had decided to secure the skid plate in a pretty creative way. This customer came in with their Ford SUV because it had failed an emissions test after the customer had done some work on the exhaust system by themselves. This customer rolled in saying that he hit a larger garden gnome on his way home from work and wanted the steering checked. Hey, at least it stops. Customer states, car has been feeling a little sluggish lately, even though my brother patched it up and said it should be fine. And this Chevy SUV somehow drove into the shop looking like this. Customer came in saying that she backed into a garbage can at a local Walmart. Once the mechanic had the car on the lift, he found the front suspension looking like this. Bent control arms, twisted sway bar, tie rod ends completely knocked out of shape, and parts of the wheel being pretty bent. The owner of this Jeep had let a friend of a friend do some brake work on it for cheap and had been driving it like this for over a week, before having to come into the shop to have it looked at. Customer states, needed to get the alternator out of my Honda, started pulling a few things, but not entirely sure how to get back from here. And in some magical way, this car managed to get into the shop right on time. This car came in with a cat anti-theft sticker on the side, but when the mechanic lifted it, he found the catalytic converter was gone anyway. I guess stickers are not that scary after all. And this customer came in saying that they had tried doing some engine work for the first time and wanted the mechanic to make sure everything looked good. The owner of this car had been on his way to a job interview when the temperature light came on. He had the cooling system topped up the week before by his roommate, but it looks like he must have forgotten something. And this car came in after the customer said they've had a strange sound ever since another shop did some suspension work for them. Customer states, heard a noise from the engine and then it went away. I kept driving for a bit to see if it would sort itself out, but about 10 minutes later the car shut off on me. Customer states, recently had some differential work at another shop, but car now makes a whirring sound at all speeds. Customer came in saying that his car has started to develop a real personality and kinda wiggles when he drives. This truck rolled in looking like this after the customer had tried installing a new wheel bearing on it by himself. The owner of this car came in saying the gear shift had started feeling really stiff and that it was getting harder to get into gear every day. Turns out the center console had been working extra as a piggy bank. The owner of this Kia came in complaining about a clunking sound when braking, and this is what the mechanic found. Customer states, just need some new brake pads. The calipers are fine, I just had them checked recently. And this customer was in with their semi-truck for some work when the mechanic noticed that their trailer had had some pretty interesting DIY work done to it. The mechanic pulled a U-joint on this one and set it on the ground and found that it was happy to move in just about every direction a U-joint is not supposed to move in. The owner of this Chevy Silverado came in complaining about it sounding hella loud at all speeds and said he thinks it's because they hit a bag of Cheetos on the highway the day before. Must have been one hell of a bag of Cheetos. Customer states, yeah, the dealership wouldn't touch it, but it starts every time. The owner of this Toyota had parked it on the street the night before, and when they went to go to work the next morning, they found someone had stolen one of the wiper arms. Customer states, "My car's been making a little squealing sound for a while now, but I think it just needs some WD-40. And this vehicle came in after the customer had done his very first oil change on it a week prior. This Peugeot came in for some routine maintenance, but when the mechanic opened the AdBlue filler port in the trunk, he found nothing, just the road underneath. This pretty much brand new Lincoln Corsair rolled in after the customer said that they had started getting a vibration in the steering wheel for the past 2 to 3 months, but had kept driving since they thought it was probably something wrong with the road and not their car. This car came in for a new serpentine belt when the mechanic popped the hood and found the alternator just hanging out. Customer came in saying, "Radio was playing my favorite tune, so I turned it up while I drove through a neighborhood I usually stay away from. And I think I must have hit a swarm of large bugs or something, because I kept hearing these popping sounds. Could you check it out?" This mechanic had found the source of this customer's oil leak pretty quickly, almost immediately actually.
Oh no, I'm almost up. Oh Send help.
The owner of this car had been on his way to visit some family a couple states over when he noticed the car running a bit hot but figured it was probably nothing. Actually, it was not nothing. This customer came in for some brake work after they had bought this car for $8,300 because it apparently was a one-of-a-kind barn find. More like a one-of-a-kind piece of shit. The owner of this car had called up a buddy to come give them a jump, and it seemed like everything was going fine. Customer came in saying that their minivan felt like driving a living room on wheels, but that they had fixed it themselves and just wanted the mechanics to do a tire rotation. Customer states, "I've been getting some complaints about the smell, but I think it's starting to grow on people." And this car came in with quite the dented rim after the customer said that she raced another car for a parking spot and won, but ended up slamming into a curbside on the way. The owner of this Ford F-250 had been on his way home from a fishing trip with his friends when something underneath the truck let go. He didn't think much of it and just drove it the rest of the way home, but was now in because he had no brakes. Customer states, "Took my car track racing for the very first time, but I think I must have pushed it too hard. Please advise." The owner of this Chevrolet Equinox had been on her way to visit her sister when she noticed something dripping in the driveway. Someone had been at the engine with orange silicone at some point, but it was still leaking through it. This customer was in for an oil change and said that his favorite movie is Fast and the Furious. The owner of this car came in saying they had a dunking sound when going over bumps and that they had no idea what could be causing it. The mechanic got underneath, grabbed a hammer and chisel, and started chipping away at what turned out to be a truckload of dried concrete packed into the undercarriage. And this pickup truck rolled in because it had failed a safety inspection due to the customer's pretty creative frame repair. The owner of this car came in saying the handling felt a little loose after their son had borrowed it for a few days. Turns out the lower ball joint wanted to go on a lifelong vacation to the scrapyard. Customer states, "Car runs a bit warm, haven't changed coolant in a while, but maybe it's time." Customer states, "There's a tiny vibration at highway speeds, but I think it just needs new tires." Customer states, "Slight steering wheel vibration, please check and advise." The owner of this car was very confident the exhaust system just needed a small repair. The mechanic found the whole exhaust looking like this. This guy had been to the shop a week prior for an oil change when the mechanics insisted that he should get some new winter tires and brakes installed, which he then refused, but had to come into the shop a week later because he got a dose of instant karma. This mechanic was just doing an oil change on this customer's car, and this is what was in the oil pan. I wouldn't call this an oil change, but rather more of an archaeological dig. The owner of this car came in as they had a bad steering wheel vibration. Turns out that the customer has bad eyesight and had used an air pump at his local gas station and accidentally entered the wrong PSI number. Talk about a close call. The owner of this car came in saying his neighbor had recently helped with some suspension work, but now the ride felt a little rough. The front strut towers had split at the corners, and the customer's neighbor had gone at the cracks with some JB weld. And this customer had tried to do an engine swap by themselves, but had to come in to get some help. Customer states, my arms have been getting a real workout lately. Not sure if that's a car problem or if I need a gym membership. The mechanic found that someone had done a bit of carpentry work under the hood and the power steering had not taken it so well. And this sob came in because the horn had stopped working. The mechanic who popped the hood on this one found the battery looking like this. Turns out another shop had done a bit of a creative installation job and things had gotten a little steamy since then. And this poor car had seen one too many curbsides. Customer states, my Honda has been smoking a little from the engine bay, but I think it's just a valve cover gasket. This car came in because the customer couldn't disengage their parking brake after they had let another shop refurbish their brake calipers. The mechanics found the issue to be caused by a stuck caliper piston. Customer states, hit a speed bump going a little faster than I probably should have, and now there's a knocking sound. Can you check it out? Customer states, so my car was pulling to one side for a while, but I figured out a way to fix it myself. This car came in with an oil leak that the owner couldn't trace. The mechanic opened the hood and found the oil cap just dancing on top of the fill hole. And this customer's Audi came in because the dash decides to throw a party at precisely 28 miles an hour. When the mechanic lifted this truck and got underneath it, he noticed the suspension parts were wearing quite the rust jacket. Some of them had been doing so for long enough that the rust had become real bad. And this guy was apparently driving around on slicks. Yikes. The owner of this Jeep had been hearing a clunking sound from the rear for a few weeks and had asked their father-in-law to have a look. He said everything seemed fine, but the mechanic had a slightly different opinion. This car had to come in for some new tires after the customer had engaged the parking brake to try and avoid hitting the car in front of them that had suddenly stepped on the brakes. This customer came in saying that they had a clunking sound from the front end that had been getting worse over the past few weeks. The mechanic found the control arm looking like this. And this car came in with a handful of different problems. Customer states, my BMW has started blowing smoke rings out the back. Very artistic and all, but I'm not sure it's supposed to do that. This truck was in for an oil change when the mechanic noticed it had a pretty unique truck bed. When asked about it, the customer apparently said, it's for aerodynamic purposes, but you mechanics wouldn't understand anything about that. The owner of this truck rolled in complaining about a clunking sound from the back and couldn't for the life of him figure out where it was coming from. Mechanic found that whoever did the oil change had made a dog's breakfast out of the drain plug threads and also installed the wrong sized oil filter, which had caused the engine to run pretty much bone dry. This customer rolled in saying their buddy had repaired their broken steering a few weeks ago, but it still didn't work as it should. The mechanic found this beautiful silicone, tie wraps, and electrical tape creation underneath the car. Customer came in complaining about poor handling, and this is what the technicians found. This car came in because the customer said that they can almost turn their steering wheel 90 degrees while still going in a straight line. When the mechanic went to open the trunk on this old Ford minivan, he found that someone had engineered a one-of-a-kind trunk release system by running a wire out from behind the model badge, through a small hole and down to the trunk latch. This Subaru rolled in with some electrical problems and the customer said, I usually take my car to the same garage, but I wanted to save some cash this time, so my nephew did some wiring work on it for free. Customer states, my car doesn't bounce nearly as much as it used to. I think the suspension is actually getting better. Customer states, I don't know why, but my brakes are squeaking. Please check and advise. The owner of this car came in saying, there's something wrong with my armrest. It doesn't close like it should. Yummy. Customer states, I was just driving along, heard a really loud crack, and now the engine sounds like a blender. Please advise. Oh yeah, it's one of those new scree brake rotors. This customer had been on his way to pick up his son from a weekend hockey tournament when he noticed the temperature rising. The coolant reservoir came out covered in blue crystals, like something that shouldn't have been in there had been in there for quite a long time. This truck was in because the customer said that one of their rear doors wouldn't stay shut and wanted the technician to have a look. The owner of this 2021 Volkswagen T-Roc had just picked it up off the lot the day before and was on his way to show it off to his friends when the car just stopped going anywhere. The mechanic opened it up and found the clutch looking a bit tired. This SUV came in after the customer said it had started to handle like a sheet of plywood on a stormy day after they had some frame repair done at a different shop. Customer states, yeah, she's a little rough around the edges, you know, but she drives fine. Just needs a couple new tires and she'll be as good as new. Customer states, the stupid car door won't open again. Please advise. Customer states, bought it from a guy up north who said it had been sitting in a heated garage. Should be almost 100% clear of rust, he said. Customer came in saying that her stepdad had fixed her power steering recently, but that something wasn't quite right and wanted the mechanic to have a look. And this customer had fixed an oil leak on their engine block, all by themselves, using some JB weld, but it was still leaking. Why have only one brake pad in each slot when you can have two? And the owner of this Buick came in with quite the transmission leak after they had towed it behind their RV, but accidentally hooked the tow line to the ATF lines instead of the tow point. The mechanics over at this shop had a BMW X5 roll-in on them that had apparently decided it was done being a car and wanted to be a fog machine instead. And this Nissan had some suspension work done at another shop, but had to come in after the customer had heard a loud pop while driving on the freeway. Customer states, buddy of mine tuned a truck for me and managed to make it 30% lighter by removing a bunch of surplus parts that I didn't need. The owner of this truck apparently decided that stock ride height just wasn't gonna cut it anymore. And this guy had their buddy help them fix their truck's engine fan, but now it felt sluggish when driving, and they also had a pretty awful smell coming from the engine. And this mechanic drained the oil on a nearly brand new car and found it looking more like iced coffee than motor oil. Cozy. And this car rolled in with a handful of different problems as the customer's usual mechanic had gone bananas during the yearly maintenance and mixed up pretty much everything you shouldn't mix up when working on a car. This mechanic was doing new bearings and ball joints on this customer's car and almost got the other side's entire wheel hub assembly on his foot, so he found a safer way to do it for this side. This car came in with a bit of an oil pressure problem after the mechanic noticed something a little more interesting than just low oil on the dipstick. And this customer said that he can't tell how fast he's driving. The owner of this Mazda CX-5 came in saying their engine had developed a little tick and wanted it looked at. The mechanic pulled the oil filter and cut it open and found it full of the fun kind of glitter that an engine makes right before it stops working. The owner of this car had done some suspension work together with their father the week before, but had to come in due to loud clunking sounds when going over speed bumps. The mechanic found the wheels on this SUV looking like this. Turns out, the wheels had been drilled out to fit a car they were never really meant for, and the customer had driven it like that for quite some time. This car had its own little portable car show on the dash. It ain't safe, but it sure is fun. This Kia EV6 rolled in after the owner said she hit a speed bump on her way out of the parking garage, and now the front end was making a sound she'd never heard before. The mechanic opened the hood and found the strut mount looking like this. Customerstates installed a couple of sport windshield wipers that she found on Temu, but thinks they're a bit too fast for her car and wants the regular ones instead. Customerstates did the rear brakes myself last weekend and used whatever I had in the garage. I've done it before, so should be totally fine. Customerstates had the car parked close to a large dirt pile for about 2 weeks while I was on vacation, but I found a bunch of squatters when I came back. The owner of this jet ski was pretty sure it was just a battery issue and that he'd be back out on the water by the afternoon. The mechanic reached inside and found the entire engine sitting in water. This engine came out of a customer's dirt bike who had been speeding to get to his new girlfriend the night before when the bike had just shut off on him while he was doing 90 miles an hour. Customerstates had my car in at another shop last week and now it makes a sound like an angry cat whenever I start it up. Can you check it out? And this customer was really afraid to lose his custom bumper, so he secured it in his very own way. The mechanic popped the hood on this one and found the brake fluid reservoir looking like it had been topped up by someone who grabs whichever bottle is closest. The owner of this car came in with it looking like this after they had hit a lion-shaped concrete roadblock while trying a new shortcut on their way to work. And this customer had recently done an oil change at a quick lube shop, but now complained about a loud sound when driving, especially at higher speeds. The other shop had apparently left a little souvenir for the customer. The owner of this car came in for an inspection after they had just got it at a bargain price at a local auction. The mechanics discovered that it wasn't such a bargain after all. Customerstates, occasional starting issues accompanied by a strange smell. Please advise. And this customer came in saying that they did some suspension work on it, but that it now felt worse than before. When the mechanic grabbed the wheel and gave it a rock, the CV axle was moving along with it. And sometimes, mechanics do get lucky too. The owner of this truck had been running a few errands when he noticed the temperature gauge climbing a little higher than normal. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, the ground underneath the truck had turned itself into a small lake. And when your engine oil starts looking all glittery, it's probably too late for an oil change. Customerstates, car has been feeling a little more lively than usual lately, but I figured that's normal as it gets older, right? Looks good. Customerstates, my Fiat won't turn anymore, it just kinda goes wherever it wants to. This customer had apparently stanced out their old brick Volvo about a month prior, but came in after they had hit one pothole too many. Customerstates, I've been hearing a little knocking sound from the front for a few weeks now, but only when I go over bumps. Is that normal? This car came in after the owner complained about a wobbly steering wheel after they had done a tire rotation at another shop. Customerstates, my car's been running a little warm lately, but I think it's just the weather. And the owner of this car had fixed his broken ignition by himself and just came in to see if everything looked alright to the mechanic. The owner of this car had apparently decided to do his own transmission service at home to impress his father-in-law with his mechanical skills. When the mechanic had a look at the pan, the magnets were absolutely covered in metal particles. Barely broken in. The owner of this Honda Civic came in saying everything was fine and the car just needed a standard service. The mechanic kindly disagreed with the customer and told them that having a way to stop their car is a very important thing. This customer had fixed their SUV's rake in their very own particular way and came in to ask the mechanic if he thought everything looked solid. Customer states, "I only hear the clunking when I'm going over bumps. Is that normal?" And this customer wanted to drive their tires to the very last mile. The owner of this car was pretty sure his neighbor had done a solid job on the new suspension. Came in a few days later to have the hood checked out because it had developed what he described as a small bubble. Anyone want some chocolate fondue? The owner of this car came in saying that he's got a wobbly steering wheel at highway speeds, but also said that if he just drives a little slower, it goes away. And this car came in because the customer said it was all over the road after they had installed a sportier suspension that they apparently found on Temu. The owner of this car came in saying, "Yeah, there's a little steam coming from under the hood, but I think it's just condensation." Customer states, "My rearview mirror only works sometimes." Customer states, "Hit something on the highway while on the way to the airport. Please check and advise." The mechanic pulled the transfer case cover on this one and found the gears inside had seen much better days. Whatever service interval this thing had, it had blown past it a long time ago. The owner of this vehicle rolled in with quite the clunking sounds at all speeds after they had done some suspension and tune-up work at a different shop. Customer states, "I think I might have a small oil leak. Can you check it out?" This car came in because it had a terrible brake squeal ever since the customer had tried replacing the brake pads for the first time. Customer states, "Son changed his own oil for the first time. He wasn't sure how much to put in, so he just kept going until it felt right." The owner of this classic Mercedes came in saying that he thinks he hit a squirrel while on his way home from visiting his family and wanted the mechanic to have a look. And this Jeep Compass came in with some transmission issues after the owner said it had recently gotten a new battery installed at a different shop. This Audi rolled into the shop because it had quite the misfire. The mechanics found a broken cam lobe that was rotating on the camshaft to be the main culprit. Customer came in saying that it's gotten harder to put it in gear after their grandfather had borrowed their car for 6 months. This customer came in saying that he hit a bit of turbulence on the highway. The owner of this car came in because they had a terrible clunk anytime they hit the brakes. Turns out that the customer had another shop install new calipers and pads 2 weeks prior, but they had used tie wraps to secure the caliper instead of the proper caliper bolts. And this mechanic couldn't figure out where a brake noise was coming from. He checked the front, the rear, and even under the car, but then he opened the trunk. And this customer apparently thinks oil changes are a scam and therefore hadn't had one in quite a while. This truck had been on its way back from a camping trip when the owner noticed a new vibration at highway speeds. The differential cover came off and the main gear inside moved around freely in every direction it wasn't supposed to. The owner of this Dodge had it in for its first oil and filter change in 3.5 years, and this is how the air filter looked. The owner of this car needed some new headlights, but couldn't find the right bulb size, so he improvised a bit. This air filter had apparently decided to work extra as a terrarium. This truck came in for an oil change when the mechanic discovered that the rear subframe was pretty unique. And this customer came in saying that his car makes more of a patakataka noise than a vroom noise and wanted it looked at.